In a world plagued by generic noise, one goblin can save us all.
Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. Thanks for joining me. This is my top 10 cards for EDH printed in Guilds of Ravnica. I'm very excited about this set, and I think it has a lot of potentially explosive cards that are going to make some real impact on the EDH playing field. As we always do, we're going to start with some honorable mentions, the first of which is Niv Mizzet, Peyrune. What can I say except for the fact that he costs 2 more colored symbols than his predecessors, but he comes with a lot of upside. First, he's uncounterable, which means that he's inevitable and very difficult to deal with outside of bouncing or killing outright. Like his earlier version, he's able to combo off with Curiosity, which is a perk. And if being uncounterable and comboing off isn't enough, he also draws you cards when you cast instants and sorceries, which is frankly what Izzet wants to be doing anyway. I'm keeping him as an honorable mention since he doesn't really do anything new, he's just a better version of his older version. My next honorable mention is Mission Briefing. People have been saying that this is a worse version of Snapcaster Mage, but they're mostly looking at it from a 60 card format. Yes, it lacks the body and the threat of a 2/1 powered creature, but in EDH, being able to recast an instant or a sorcery from our graveyard we otherwise wouldn't be able to access has a lot more upside than it does in those other formats. What's keeping this off the list is the fact that it is timing restrictive, which means you can't cast sorceries on your opponent's turn, which is a bit of a downside. My last honorable mention, and now that I think of it, all of them are blue, is Thousand Year Storm. When this was spoiled, people were losing their mind. You get to copy an instant or a sorcery for every other instant and sorcery you've cast that turn. That's just bananas, but frankly I see this as more of a win more card. The decks that would consider running this are things like Melik, Mizzet, or Kess, and all of them are capable of winning even without this card, so that means even if you resolve it, it just helps you win on top of you already winning. This is by no means saying this is a bad card, I just am not that excited by it. But who cares about honorable mentions? Let's get into the top 10. Number 10. Underrealm Lich. Now I know Sean, who you might remember from my videos, is very excited about this card, and rightly so. Card selection in EDH when it comes to drawing is very powerful, and it allows you better answers to what you need to deal with on the board. It also dumps the cards that you don't want into the graveyard, which in EDH is basically just an extension of your hand in most cases. And, on top of all of that, you're able to protect it easily by paying 4 life, which is honestly just a drop in the bucket when you consider that you start with 40 life in EDH. What got me excited about this card was actually something that happened and came up in the Loading Ready run pre-release. Supposedly, according to the judge chat, this can actually bypass your losing to not being able to draw a card. I'm not entirely sure what the exact ruling or why it happens, just that the question was asked during a game between Adam and Cameron. If this is true, I'd actually consider this card higher up on my list than it already is. Number 9. Mnemonic Betrayal. So, we heard you like Yawgmoth's Will. Well, have you considered Yawgmoth's Will? But instead of using your graveyard, use your opponent's graveyard. Oh yeah, and you can also use any color of mana to spend on spells. This card for me is a flavor home run, and it perfectly fits with Demir's idea of stealing and plotting and doing all kinds of shenanigans. The only downside, and it's why I'm keeping it lower on the list, is the fact that all the cards that you exile from their graveyard eventually go back to your opponents, and even the cards you cast don't go to exile. This means you can't really mess with their graveyard as much as you want, and unfortunately it does mean you have to rely on the fact that an opponent has a good graveyard you want to use to begin with. These 2 factors are what kept this so low on my list, but I do have very high hopes for it. Number 8. Plaguecrafter. This list actually has 2 uncommons on it because I think they're just that good. Plaguecrafter offers us the 3rd variant of Fleshbag Marauder, coming only a few years after the printing of Merciless Executioner. There is a huge noticeable difference between this and Fleshbag Marauder and Merciless Executioner, and that's that it forces your opponents to sacrifice a Planeswalker. Plus, if they can't sacrifice a Planeswalker or a creature, they have to discard a card, meaning this card always has some utility. That gives this card significantly more power on casting it on an open board. I think this added versatility is more than enough to make it to my list, and I'm really looking forward to playing with this card in the future. Number 7. Beast Whisperer. Primordium Sage already sees quite a bit of EDH play, and being able to draw a card on cast as opposed to entering is relevant. What's even more relevant is a Primordial Sage that comes out 2 turns earlier and has a relevant creature type, Elf. I'm really not going to lose any sleep over the fact that he's lost some power and toughness compared to the Sage, especially when you consider how early this can come out, especially when you're setting up with cards like Wood Elves, Farhaven Elf, and other ways of ramping or drawing, which are then amped up by the fact that you get to draw and casting them. I think any elf deck like Freyalise or Azuri suddenly has a new staple for it, and I'm really excited to try this out in Animar and even Carador. Number 6. Mausoleum Secrets. Another card people got overly excited for when it was first released, I was pretty underwhelmed with. Undergrowth for me is not a particularly exciting mechanic, and I'm pretty sure it's because they're afraid of creating Dredge 2.0. I think it goes without saying that an instant speed tutor is always a strong card to have in hand, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make this one work. First of all, you have to have creatures in your graveyard, which isn't something that every deck wants to do. If I were to look at this card from my Drownu deck, it'd be virtually useless. That is only a fringe case, but it's something you should bear in mind. The card you have to find also has to be equal to or less than the amount of creature cards in your graveyard, which is restrictive in and of itself. But wait, there's more restrictions! It also has to be a black card. This means you can't cast it in response to someone casting a game-winning spell, find Pact of Negation, and then use Pact of Negation. The color restriction alone kinda kills it for me, and the final nail in the coffin for me is the fact that I have to reveal the card that I'm tutoring for, obviously to make sure that it meets the restrictions, but it also telegraphs what I'm going for. Number 5. Doom Whisperer. A 5-mana 6/6 flying trampler is really good in Limited, and not so great in EDH. What is good in EDH is paying 2 life to survey 2. Gaining infinite life is not an uncommon thing in EDH, and even without considering that, paying 2 life to put 2 cards into my graveyard is not something that can be overlooked, especially if you're running a Reanimator or graveyard-based deck. This is definitely a card I'll be testing out in Carador. Number 4. Lazar the Multifarious. Oh, I just love the name alone, and for only 2 mana we have a very strong commander. Plus, he surveys as soon as he comes in. That's just value. Having 1 power and 3 toughness is not ideal, but he's 2 mana, so let's be realistic. Plus, 3 toughness isn't that bad, it gets around things like Massacre Worm. His ability is what pushes him so over the top though. By paying X, you're able to have Lazar become a copy of any creature in your graveyard, except it still remains Lazar, and it still has the ability, which means you can have 2 copies of a legendary basically. He's like a Sakashima the Imposter but for your graveyard, and what makes it even better is you don't have to exile the creature card, so that means you can copy it and then use Animate Dead to bring it out. Oh my goodness, this card, if I didn't already have Drownu built, would make me build Dimir. Number 3. Divine Visitation. So not only is one of my favorite cards from the set a card from Victor Adame, it's also a token-based card. Oh my gosh! As a man who loves his tokens, even though it's a white card, I'm still very keen on this. This will probably be another staple card just like Anointed Procession and Doubling Season and Parallel Lives in any deck that can run it. It's kind of the pimp your ride for EDH, where it's basically like, hey, you have a soldier token, but do you know what's even better than paying for that soldier token? Paying for a soldier token and getting a 4/4 flying angel instead. I am all on board for this card. Number 2. Goblin Cratermaker. That's right folks, my number 2 spot in this list is an uncommon goblin creature. And the reason for this is for only 1 red and 2 colorless, one of which is for the activated ability, we're able to destroy Ugin, or Karn, or Kozilek, or Emrakul, or any other troublesome colorless permanent. This card is already making waves in other constructed formats like Modern, so it only makes sense that it would have just as much impact in a constructed format like EDH. Sure, you can't run 3 other copies of it, but usually 1 is enough. And my number 1 spot is Assassin's Trophy. As I was saying about the Cratermaker, strangely enough, cards that see play across all their formats do show up in EDH. Premium removal like Assassin's Trophy is so versatile in EDH, and paying 1 black and 1 green to destroy any permanent you want of your opponents is just worth running. Your opponent's troublesome guy's Cradle got you down? No problem, they got a basic now. That Tameo keeping your creatures locked down by tapping them out? No problem, they get a basic. Honestly, I don't have much to say on this card beyond what's already been said. This is amazing removal, and it's going to cost a pretty penny to get one, but it's worth it. Anyway gang, that is my top 10 cards for EDH coming out of Guilds of Ravnica. I'm super excited for the set, and I wish you luck and fun at your pre-releases and sealed events in the future. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.